this is your last chance. After this, there is no turning back. You take the blue pill, the story ends. You take the red pill, you stay in Wonderland. You take the red pill, you stay in Wonderland.
Hello YouTube, Bane666 here. So today I want to talk about a TV show that recently started about 2 months ago, and you've probably never heard of it. It's called Evil. So let me start by telling you the premise of the show, and then I'll move into why I'm actually making this video. As you might have guessed, it's been a little bit infected by wokeness. I know, I was surprised too that a TV show these days would be infested with wokeness preaching. What a surprise. But anyway, the premise of the show is, in the first episode, we're introduced to the main character, who is a psychiatrist, and she works for the court determining if people are mentally ill or not. She gives her expert opinion in court cases. And she comes across a character who claims to be possessed. And this puts her in contact with the other two main characters, who work for the Catholic Church, determining whether people are actually possessed or not. And through a series of events, the psychiatrist loses her job with the court and decides to start working with the Catholic Church to examine cases of possession and miracles and things like that. Now, this psychiatrist character is an atheist and doesn't believe in supernatural shenanigans. So she is the skeptic of the group, one of the two skeptics. There is also another character who's a skeptic, whose background is more in examining, I guess, cons using technology and things like that, right? The third character is someone who's training to become a priest. So he's obviously not a skeptic, and he believes in all the supernatural shenanigans. Now, you may notice something about these three characters. One is a white female, one is a black male, and the third is a non-practicing, because he's a skeptic, Muslim male. So we have a very diverse group here. Not that I think there's anything wrong with that, although we'll get back to that in a second. The fourth main character is the villain, who just so happens to be a white straight male. I bet no one saw that coming. Who in all likelihood is in league with the devil, as you know most straight white men are, right? I mean, I think we've all learnt that. It's 2019, isn't that being taught in schools now? I'm pretty sure it is. So you may see a pattern here with the casting. Now, I have to say, I don't have a problem with diversity in casting. I don't have a problem with there being a lead female character or a person of colour in a lead, as long as the story is good and the characters are good and, you know, there's good production. I really don't care that much. And I really don't care if the villain is a straight white male. In fact, there have been many great villains in the history of cinema and television who are straight white men. My issue, though, is if these decisions are based on politics. If the reason behind the casting is to elevate people who aren't straight white men while demonizing straight white men, then yeah, there is a problem. It would be no different than if Richard Spencer got a gig writing TV shows and he cast all the heroes as straight white men and all the villains as people of colour. I think people would have a problem with that, and I think they would have good reason to have a problem with that. Well, it's no different in cases like this, and this is becoming more and more common. To get the social justice tick of approval, the good guys have to fall into one approved category. You either have to be gay, a person of colour, or female, or any combination of those approved qualities. And the only appropriate gig for straight white men is that of villains, or complete idiots, or misogynists, or, you know, domestic abusers, etc., etc. It's a form of political typecasting. Now, having said all that, I really didn't have a problem with this show up until about 2 episodes ago. I think it was episode 7. Because apart from the casting, there really wasn't much wokeness in it up until episode 7, that is. It mainly concentrated on the contrast of belief systems of the main characters. Those who are skeptic and those who believe in supernatural shenanigans. Now, of course, the show does heavily suggest that the supernatural shenanigans side is the correct side, and let's face it, the reason why that is because that makes the story more interesting. It would be pretty boring if every episode was just a case of mental illness and someone being possessed was just in their imagination or whatever. So yeah, I understand that shows like this will always fall on the side of the supernatural shenanigans, and as an atheist I don't have an issue with that because I know it's just entertainment. But as I said, around episode 7 I think it was, that started to change. There was a young man who is obviously a straight white man, of course, he's going to be in the villain category. And he goes up to a woman in a coffee shop and he asks her out and she turns him down. And he gets angry over this. And the main villain in it, who, is obviously an agent of Satan, as all straight white men are, he sees this and he takes this young man under his wing. And I should point out that the main villain is also a psychiatrist. And he starts giving this young man free psychiatric sessions, in which he starts grooming him as a Insel Killer. Suddenly, the casting doesn't look like just a coincidence, does it? So this really came to a head in episode 9, which I've just watched. And the main bad guy, who you may know from Lost, if you remember that show about 10 years ago, he was also the villain in that show. And admittedly, he does make a good villain. I do give the actor that. But he starts grooming this young man and he tells him to go to a female gym and to make a gun with his hand and to pretend to shoot the women. I mean, that's what all psychiatrists do, don't they? I mean, well, the white straight male ones, obviously, because they're the ones that are in league with Satan, as we know. So this young man goes to the gym and he says, I want to use the gym, and the woman behind the counter says, well, it's a female only gym. And the guy starts saying, well, that's sexist, because I should be able to use the gym if I want. And she then takes a phone call and he walks over and he starts pretending to shoot people with his hand, and the security guard comes and throws him out. So later on he has another session with the psychiatrist, and the psychiatrist says, well, are you ready to take it to the next level? And the guy goes, yeah, I guess so. And he introduces him to someone who I think is a security guard, and he teaches him to shoot, and he gets him a large selection of guns, including assault rifles. Because that's what happens all the time. A young man gets turned down by a woman, and he immediately turns into a serial killer. Because that happens all the time. It's not like the cases where that's happened in the past, there's been a history of mental illness or anything. No, it just takes one woman turning down a man for him to be turned into an incel killer. That is, if he's white and straight, of course. So this young guy, this young incel, gets a large collection of guns and he learns how to use them, and he's ready to go shoot up the female gym. And the psychiatrist tells him that that's a bad target because they know what you look like now. And he's trying to push him to go towards his prayer meeting, which is apparently filled with mainly women. Those poor incels, just being manipulated by Satan like that. I mean, he doesn't really care about you guys, he's just using you. You should have seen that one coming. So he agrees to do it, and later on in his room, he's playing around with the guns. He's got them all laid out on his bed, and he's playing around with them, and he accidentally shoots himself in the head. Some really good writing there. Some fantastic writing. I don't know how anyone could make fun of that. I swear I'm not laughing. Of course, the Spawn of Satan psychiatrist guy, he's not too happy about this because it's fucked up his plans, right? So he jumps on the internet and he types in angry incel videos. And look what he finds. He finds a video called "It's Time for Men's Rights." You dirty fucking cunts. You dirty fucking piece of shit. Look what it says here. We can't read the whole thing, but it says there is a worldwide movement to something, their rightful position as leaders. Yeah, because that's what men's rights is about, right? Men taking their rightful position as leaders. Something about feminism. It's time for men to have something. We can't read the whole thing, but I think we can imagine what it says. And of course, the one underneath is global feminist conspiracy. Well, doesn't this episode of Evil actually support that idea? It kind of does. There's another one called Chad's and Stacy's Suck, which, is actually, I guess, a reasonable title for an angry incel video. There's another one called Black Pill Truth. Oh, that's another thing I should mention. I forgot to mention that. The psychiatrist said something about the young man having his red pill moment, which is interesting, considering incels are black pilled. But, this is nothing but propaganda. So what do you expect? And that's where it ends. Well, that's some fantastic writing there. Clearly not propaganda. Clearly not pro-wokeness. I don't know how anyone could have a problem with any of this, right? So, there's a couple of other things I should mention about Episode 7, and Episode 7 was the first episode in which the failed Insel Killer appeared. The main story in that episode was about a woman who appears to be possessed by the devil or a demon or whatever. Think of Linda Blair from The Exorcist. Spoilers, it turns out she's not possessed at all, it's just mental illness. This is one of the episodes which doesn't have supernatural shenanigans in it. But anyway, during the course of their investigation, it seems that she might be responsible for the murder of some missing children. She seems to know some information which hasn't been made public, which would suggest that, she's the one behind it. Now, of course, if she is, she's either possessed by the devil or she has mental illness, because we all know that women never kill, right? Unless they're forced to by evil men or they're mentally ill or possessed by the devil or something, right? Because it's not in women's nature to do acts of evil. And as they investigate, we find out that her car may somehow be linked to these missing children, which would suggest that she is the guilty party. Now, long story short, by the end of the episode, we find out that she's not actually guilty. She's not the one that's been murdering these children. No, it happens to be her white, straight, male husband who's been killing the kids. She's just a helpless victim. She's just a helpless woman with mental illness who somehow has incorporated her evil husband's acts into her delusional fantasy or some bullshit like that. Absolutely amazing writing on this show. Absolutely stunning. But of course, her husband isn't possessed by Satan, nor was he mentally ill, because as we know, when men kill, it's just because they're men. That's what men do, especially the white, straight ones. They're especially bad. Every one of them is in league with Satan. And I mean, can you blame us? Because Satan really does have all the best music. I mean, it's really not much of a choice, is it? I mean, do you want to go to heaven and listen to the fucking Backstreet Boys or something? I mean... So the other thing about this episode I should mention is the first session between the psychiatrist and the incel. The satanic psychiatrist suggests to the incel that he should stand up to this woman who rejected him in the coffee shop, and he should go in and abuse her. And the incel says something like, "But what if she goes to the police?" And the psychiatrist says, "Oh, don't worry about that. No one ever believes women. They're always so emotional and irrational." Yeah, that's right. Yeah, no one ever believes women.